10.
Hello, my name is Matt Mayer, aka Imp, and this is LOP Radio on YouTube, on Spreaker, and wherever you get your podcast feeds. Full transparency, today was meant to be a New Japan Cup preview after they posted the schedule earlier this week. Myself and SirSam got talking, and we're thinking, yeah, let's do a preview for the tournament. Should have been taking place next week, but of course, with all the seriousness of the coronavirus, events all over Japan have been cancelled, and New Japan is no exception. They've cancelled all events for the next 2 weeks, pushing them back to later in March, which left me and SirSam with, well, we've still got a show to do. We've just got no show to preview, so what do we do? Well, coincidentally, there's a massive show this Saturday, so that was bloody lucky. AEW Revolution, taking place midnight my time, live from Chicago. Can't remember which part of Chicago. I want to say Illinois. Jon Moxley versus Chris Jericho. Don't ask me why I forgot the main event. It's perfectly fine. I'll be going live with Aftershock, live immediately after the show on Saturday. Jan is unable to make it, so I will be going solo. But today, I thought we'd shift the show to doing a preview of AEW Revolution, going through the matches, talking all of that, whatnot. And as I said, you may have got by the little intro there, I am joined by the Right Honourable SirSam.
Thank you, Imp. Thanks very much for having me. And yeah, it's been a bit of a funny ride these last few days. We saw that New Japan card, the bracket pop up, and my eyes popped out of my head with how good it looked, and I immediately went, hey, do you want to do a preview for this? This looks awesome. And then we rode the high for 2 days, and then we hit the low of it being cancelled, and then realising that it's been postponed for 2 weeks, so that it'll run straight up to Secure Genesis. So we'll see what happens in 2 weeks. I might be on again, who knows, if you'll have me. But yeah, it's AEW Revolution to the rescue, and yeah, it's mighty lucky that you're happy to do this, because I don't watch WWE, so I wouldn't be able to do your normal show.
Yeah, I've been ever since shifting to YouTube a lot more with Laws of Pain Radio as well, WWE, without question, gets more clicks. Like, it's not even close. We've got AEW Dynamite After Dark with Jamin and Jeff. That does really well, actually. It's one of our best shows in terms of numbers week to week. But in terms of my show, if I'm talking a topic on AEW, nothing. People do not care. It gets nothing. WWE, though, even though I'm a bit sometimes, that's the one that people care about the most, especially the Western audience. Like, they want to hear people talking about WWE and all that, so I kind of feel like I have to in that way. This week, if you anyone read my column last week, it was all about how I just can't stand SmackDown, and I watch it for the column, for the podcasts. I don't watch it because I enjoy it. Compared to all of the other three, where I am enjoying them, I've seen a bit of negative stuff with NXT, like it's hit a bit of a standard recently, but for me, I enjoy their standard. It's still miles better than anything their main roster gives, so I'm perfectly fine with that. But since 2020 has hit, AEW has been on an incredible streak of, week after week, I'm like, that's the best show they've done. Every week I say that again, because they've outdone themselves every single week. And the closer we've got to Revolution, the more and more it's become apparent how well they've built almost every single match on that card. I'd say maybe with exception for the women's title, that's more because of the bar I'm measuring them against, with every other match being at such a high level. I guess technically Pac and Orange Cassidy sticks out to a similar level of, well, the others have had months and months of build to such a high level, building and building, and these have had very short, in-the-moment sparks. For me, I love that variety on the AEW show. There's so many different styles of wrestling, and they don't try and homogenise it into, this is our style. That AEW more showcases wrestling than AEW's wrestling. That's kind of what I love about it. That really helps in terms of watching the longer shows as well, because each match feels different, which is, damn important with these long shows. As it's gotten closer to Revolution, it's become more and more apparent how well they have built up this card. Match 1 to Chris Jericho Moxley, they've done such a good job.
Yeah, I would say they've probably got 3 programs that have just been, since Full Gear, they have just been smashing it out of the park with the Jericho Moxley feud, with the way that they've paced that out. And we'll go into depth, I'm sure, with each of these. And then also, of course, the MJF versus Cody, they stepped that one out as well. And they've just paced both of those so well. And then they've done the same thing with Kenny Omega and Adam Page against the Young Bucks. We didn't think that this is something that they were heading up to. We knew that there was Adam Page was kind of off in his own, doing his own, in a little bit of a funk. And we knew that Kenny Omega had to do something after losing to Jon Moxley. But it turns out they're against the Young Bucks. And the way they've sort of built this along, these three programs have just absolutely carried the show along. And then everything else around it's, just been building off of the, that rock solid foundation. And Jake Hager versus Dustin Rhodes goes back for a fair while. You've got Darby Allen versus Sammy Guevara, which is like, that's a rock solid mid-card match there. And one that makes a lot of sense given the two different characters. I would say, a few weeks ago, I wrote an article that was in praise of the AEW women's division. And I think, it isn't at the same standard as the men's is, particularly the men's main event, but the guys they have got are doing the best they can. And I think they've really had a very solid run with it since New Year's. So since they had the week off, and except for potentially the debut of Luther and the Nightmare Collective stuff, which they've decided to just quickly drop and get rid of. I was happy to see that potentially play out because I liked what they were doing with Brandy and the therapy sessions, but they decided to just cut that off. And I think that was probably the wisest idea, even though, as I said, I was happy to see it play out. And I was happy to see them try and rejig it. But they've just been very solid with Riho having some great matches against Chris Statlander, and then losing to Nyla Rose, who's been built up really well on Dark in particular against Shanna. Yeah, it's contributed, and it's not at the same level as those other three, but it's still, as I said, those three big programs have really been hitting it out of the park every single Dynamite, providing a lot of momentum for the other sorts of things that have been going on.
Yeah, with the Nightmare Collective just being completely dropped, it's been the Dark Collective that have been able to shine and get their spotlight a bit more on the main show. WWE talk for a second. Like these, because the four women we saw last night on Dynamite, they've all been kicking ass on Dark, but it's been on Dark. I personally don't have time for Dark, so I've seen them in like the earlier Darks, but since 2020 has hit, I've stopped because I just don't have the time to watch another wrestling show. Yeah, so they've been kicking ass. They've just been hidden, essentially, on AEW Dark on YouTube, which gets, like, 1/9 of the audience. Which is still a lot for, like, a startup promotion to be getting on YouTube, but it's, like, nothing compared to for the actual exposure. Now that the Nightmare Collective thing's been dropped, suddenly there's all this free time for them, and it's really, really worked. Like, the match this week is like, back when this might have got interrupted by the Nightmare Collective, because that was the real big story playing out. And these were more like give them a bit of a dance to get over. But no, this is it's given the dance to get over, but without the interruption. So it's all about them. It was such fun. And it really, really helps. It means when a contender steps up to Nyla Rose to get her ass beat. Sorry, Chris. When that happens.
It's what's going to happen for a little bit, I think.
So when that happens, there's a lot more to it because they feel like they've had that exposure a lot more, and you've had these matches like this week, which gives them a lot more exposure and makes them feel like there is competition within the division. Whilst before the Nightmare Collective, it was squashing down the competition, which again, that was kind of the point of the angle in a way, but that had a negative effect in terms of churning out number one contenders. They were never really going to feel like they'd earned the spot, because they were getting squished down. So it made sense just to lift that off. Just let them breathe. It worked really well.
To get a bit poetic, I feel like the way that the four-way sort of went is almost reflective of the women's division as a whole. It sort of started out without... The crowd wasn't really that invested in it. It was probably a bit stilted early on as well. It wasn't amazing early on. There was some sort of... You could kind of see the seams a little bit in the match. But by the end, it built up to a really fantastic climax. And everything was flowing. Everything was moving in sync. And the crowd was really into it. And that's the way that the AEW women's division has sort of been a lot. When it's been... when Riho was sort of at her peak, I feel like she was the master at... And she started to generate a little bit more buzz around her when she'd enter. But not necessarily entering with a hot crowd, but leaving with the crowd hot. And I think that's... The AEW women's division, and this is what I said in my column, is not perfect. They didn't get a star. They haven't got a star. And it would be great if they did, but they don't. And so they've got to work with what they've got. And I think they're doing the best they can with it, and they've got the foundations, as we saw this week. They've got the foundations of a really, really good division with variety in the size, the styles, the characters, and I think, I'm bullish for the AEW women's division. I really am. I think it's got, as I said, it's got the makings of it. And you know what? As I've said it a number of times in a number of different places, in 2012, no one knew who Becky Lynch was. No one knew who Paige was. No one knew who Sasha Banks was. People knew Charlotte Flair was the daughter of Ric Flair, but they didn't know she was a great wrestler. And look where they are now. Look what they did with the NXT women's division and then subsequently the WWE women's division. And it takes time. It's going to take time for the AEW women's division to build, but I think they're on the right track, particularly, as you said, with dropping the Nightmare Collective. You're bang on that this match was a perfect example of why that was a good reason to just drop them, because the crowd was into it by the end. They weren't booing. They weren't going, what the heck's going on? Who's this bald man coming out from underneath the ring?
I love how he's become a meme. It's just like,
I
think it was something about always with the news about NXT Japan, and somebody was just like, but they're not going to be able to get hardcore legend Luther, so what's the point? There's no point even starting it.
Oh, goodness me.
But as another example, like someone like Yuka Sakazaki in this match, she got first off, yes, she's got her Joshi theme back. All the yes. I loved how Excalibur's reaction to Jim Ross saying, do you know what this is all about? And it was like, I mean, I do, but do you actually want to hear it? Which I thought was great.
I love how he had to explain to him what an anime was. That was peak grumpy old man Jim Ross.
But the fact that she's after her debut at Double or Nothing, I was calling her unapologetically Joshi. And that theme is so part of that. Like, as soon as she comes out, it's like, right, we're going to be hit with some Joshi right here. It's like the energy that comes with it.
Is there a more, on like the scale of baby faces, is there anyone more further aligned to the babyface side of things than Yuka Sakazaki?
I was trying to think, because I know I used to think that of Kairi Sane. That I know in NXT, but now on the main roster, she's proven as I did see her in Lucha Underground as one of the badasses attacking Pentagon, so I've seen she can do it. But she just become that lovable pirate. But so I used to think that of her. But Yuki Sakazaki, she's one of those where you can't help but it's like, you're awesome.
Yep.
I love because again, it's a spotlight she wouldn't have gotten with the former Nightmare Collective, but with her little thing with Big Swole, where Big Swole did her cocky, waving the finger in her face kind of thing after she was maybe about to do something, and then they did a 3-way tie-up type of thing. Yukazaki then runs into the middle and just wags her finger in Big Swole's face. That was fantastic. And the way they did the start of the match exchanges, which were, as you said, you can see the seams a little bit. They were doing that, and then they all kind of posed afterwards, we've done our big start. And Yuka Sakazaki, who did nothing, stood at the side, also posed with them. Good start. Yeah. As in, just pure amazing babyface. And I feel like she's one of those characters where the more she gets featured kind of in these roles where she's in matches, people enjoy her, but she doesn't win because somebody else is getting those title shots. Eventually she might become one of the most beloved characters. With time, which is kind of what I've seen AEW do. It's just they don't feel like they have to rush anything, and they're taking their time with stuff, taking the time getting people over. They see the value in folk like Jungle Boy, Darby Allen, Sammy Guevara, but they're not immediately putting them in pay-per-view title matches because they're getting good reactions from the gate. It's no, slowly build it. And I know I was accidentally shifting to another Revolution match because we're falling onto the women. So it's the first match we're talking about. But it's just a fantastic example that they are not rushing anything. And it's one of those where it made sense where when the company started, you see those reactions on Twitter of, there are no stories or anything, it's just matches happening. But when you're doing long-term booking, if you watch one episode without seeing any of the grander picture, that is what happens in those earlier stages. You will not notice the stories that are happening. And I still see it now on Twitter where someone says, I don't normally watch AEW, but I checked this out and I didn't see any of the story people were talking about. I was like, well, first off, you couldn't have been paying that much attention if you were.
They sell it pretty well, I feel
especially that's one of the departments when I talked about earlier with 2020, how they've improved week after week with me saying, this was their best show, and then the week after I say the same thing again. That's one of the things they've really improved upon, because it was without question, in those earlier months, they didn't do that great a job of getting stories across to people. I think they were figuring out how Being the Elite will feature in, and did people watch Being the Elite enough for it to work on Dynamite, or did you have to tell it on Dynamite? And now I feel like they've hit a fantastic kind of rhythm where they really do hit home a lot of the narratives and stories on Dynamite, and then Dark is... I think you coined it like the Lord of the Rings extended trilogy.
Yep.
It's the same stories, just with like that little bit extra to get you that are a bit more invested in the world. It's not necessary to follow the story, which is like my main point there, which I 100% agreed with. Dynamite should be necessary to follow the story, not Dark or Being the Elite. And I think they figured that out now, and Dynamite is all the better for it. I think I had a tying back point, but I've completely lost it. That's turned into a tangent. Yeah. So we were talking about the women's division. The actual match, Sam. So we've kind of spoiled it a little bit earlier, but what are you expecting to play out at Revolution?
In the women's division, I think you don't build up Nyla Rose the way you have just dominating everyone and have her lose her first defense. So I think it's pretty clear the way that she will win. But I'm definitely thinking this is going to be a competitive match. I think they're probably going to look to set up Chris Statlander as like the long-term... Chris Statlander and Riho as the long-term major rivals for Nyla Rose. Riho has already had 2 singles matches with Nyla Rose and another 3-way match, so they're already building a really cool rivalry between those guys, and I have no doubt that they'll clash again down the line. But Chris Statlander, I think, will be built up as the other rival, and I really like those 3 as a trio, and probably long term they probably want to get Britt Baker into that. I'd love to see them get Hikaru Shida into that, but that's just me. But definitely they're 3. Got Nyla Rose, who's obviously the big powerhouse. Chris Statlander's, and then Riho's obviously got that speed and athleticism and technique, and then Chris Statlander's sort of in the middle of, she's got the sort of hard hitting strikes and speed of Riho, maybe not as quick, but also not as powerful as Nyla Rose, but still definitely a powerful woman and a strong woman who can hold her own. And I've got no doubt that Nyla Rose is going to win, but if I had to sort of predict how the match is going to go, I think Chris Statlander will come out looking really good.
That's what I'm expecting as well. She's had her, I guess, mini showcases on Dynamite, and that's gotten her over, and this on pay-per-view is like the really big spotlight to shine. So this could be the moment where Chris Statlander kind of like gets elevated to like permanent top person in the division. It's all about how it plays out. But AEW have so far again done a really good job of getting both people over, not just like
I'd like to give Nyla Rose some praise because early on she looked really lost. I felt like she looked very overawed in her first few matches, but she has improved so quickly, and she has been able to develop mannerisms and body and develop a body language and a way that she moves that makes her look like the beast that she is meant to be, and makes her look big and intimidating and tough and hard hitting and just like an all-round badass. And I think she has been one of the fastest improvers on the roster, and I'm really happy with her as champion.
Yeah, ditto everything you just said. Yeah, she's... for me, it's one of those where it makes it look like Rio becoming champion wasn't the right call back then, when you think about it rightly, as SirSam was saying, Nyla Rose probably wasn't ready back then, and it's only been a short amount of time, but like now she like really is, and she can be that, I guess, what Awesome Kong was kind of meant to be, but maybe just wasn't in the shape to do it anymore after like the years of wrestling. But you can put Nyla Rose in that same spot that Awesome Kong was back when they built the TNA Knockouts division around her. Yep. Like she is that.
Yep. That's a great comparison.
That beast to take down type of thing. I use that to combat a lot of the transphobia. It's like, no, she's champion because of like same reason Awesome Kong was. For me, there's no, in terms of wrestling storyline, there's no difference. It takes so much from Awesome Kong, and the difference here, of course, is Chris Statlander a bit bigger than Gail Kim, which is what
just a little bit.
That's why that's why Awesome Kong kind of came to my mind, because of Rio and Gail Kim both having those smaller frames. And he got that bigger wrestler who's way more athletic than he would ever predict she was. And, so that kind of rang the bells for me. But Chris Statlander, she's definitely bigger than Rio. She's definitely stronger than Rio. We're definitely going to see a Nyla Rose suplex, as in get suplex, or taken down by Chris Statlander for quite a few near falls. It's more of the interesting one because it is a competitor who can take it to Nyla Rose. She's not as strong as Nyla, but she's way stronger than anyone she has faced, which gives like a whole new dynamic, which I'm damn looking forward to. And as well, Chris Statlander, one of those who's incredibly athletic as well. So it's kind of... she's still got the athleticism of a Rio mixed in with that strength as well. So it's...
I think a showcase opportunity for Chris Statlander as well. She came in... She's probably the one that's come into the AEW women's division with the most hype around her name. Of course, like, Awesome Kong is by far the best known person on the roster, and then probably woman on the roster, and then probably Brandy Rhodes. But in terms of the actual people who do the majority of the wrestling, Chris Statlander probably has the most hype around her name. And to be honest, I haven't been that impressed by her. She's great, and she's like good and serviceable, but I haven't seen anything that blows my mind. So this is a big chance for her to really show what sets her apart.
Yeah, she's one of those that I've seen on the indies a fair bit. So she, I do have that kind of pre-mainstream support for her. Which, like to be fair, that's that for most of AEW, they seem to be like, if you've killed it on the indies, that was for a reason. We'll give you a shot, like Lance Archer, which is to be like he killed it, and because he had that massive success, they're giving him this major chance on mainstream TV in the USA. It's like, yeah, that kind of thing I'd love to see AEW do, compared to like WWE do bring on those guys who do that thing, but they put them into the developmental, and it feels more like they're collecting them for the farm kind of thing. Compared to AEW, where it will be, if we're bringing you on, you're going to be on the main roster. And I think like Jon Moxley's come out and spoken of that. It feels like there's apparently backstage, it feels like there's a really high level or high bar of quality in terms of the wrestlers actually in the company, and it feels like nobody's crap. I use more colourful language, but this goes out on YouTube. So I won't put it like that. But I feel like that kind of exemplifies something, but especially it elevates the indies as well, because there's that much tighter link between mainstream and the indies, which was always something that wasn't there with WWE when they were the only mainstream one, because it felt like they'd crap on the indies. It's like, oh, you're lower leagues, compared to AEW. It's like, well, no, you're the reason we exist. Why would we crap on you? I like that. It's a more unified message. It's a more socialist message with us. So that's why us dirty foreigners like it. Me and Sam. But yes, Nyla Rose, Chris Statlander, tangented again. Can't stop myself this morning. Full on expecting Nyla Rose to win. This will be her kind of putting a stamp on her title reign at the beginning. Chris Statlander will get the showcase. She'll take it to Nyla Rose, get those extremely close near falls, but won't actually win. Maybe Nyla Rose will... I don't know, it feels like this isn't a match for Nyla Rose to win via cheating. This is still that area where she out-wrestles Chris Statlander and it's like Asuka in NXT, where they did a really good job of her initial title matches. She kicked ass. Like, she destroyed everybody. Then, the longer into the reign it went, then she started to become a bit more desperate and started cheating to keep the title rather than make the statement she was earlier on. That's what I'd like to see from this Nyla Rose title run. That she becomes that kind of force within the division, and she doesn't cheat full on from the get-go. It's slowly, as time, as she becomes a bit more desperate to keep it, rather than what it's like now. So, I'm looking forward to this one. Because, like you said, it's that one for Chris Statlander to make her stamp in the division. Right, next up, we've already talked about it, so we'll move on to it. Darby Allen, Sammy Guevara. This is a fantastic example of putting your future stars in the mid-card together and let them kind of shine in that way. It's a mini criticism of WWE when, especially in this era, it's just a slight issue of not giving this current generation that spotlight to shine and just do their thing. Allen Guevara feels like this is exactly that. Like, you've really impressed, now do your thing on pay-per-view. Yeah. All the thumbs up. And it works really well as a Inner Circle feud spin-off. I love the way they've built it. And Darby Allin in this feud has become so over, which proves how well it's worked. It's just, in terms of the build, Sam, do you think this has done the job in building up, I guess, the tension between Allin and Guevara for the pay-per-view?
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. So to tip my hat, a couple of weeks ago I was planning on writing something about all the new guys in AEW, and one of the sort of the rookies, the unknown people that have come in as unknowns, and rating how they're going. And for me, I didn't end up finishing it. I think I will in a couple of weeks' time. But for me, Darby Allin is the top. He's the top of the heap when it comes to that. He is so popular. There's people coming in with his face mask painted on. There, whenever his music hits, the crowd goes absolutely mental. And this is a perfect feud for him because he's up against it's almost like, they're both pretty young, and they both look young as well. So we could use like a high school reference. This is the we're on YouTube, so I don't want to. The F boy, Sammy Guevara, the jock, like the cocky jock against the picking a fight and bullying the sort of broody but dangerous goth guy. And it's now coming all back to bite to bite him because the last and now there's through the run-ins and the tension and I think there was a tag match that they were both involved in. They've built the tension around it until, there's now like a heated feud going on, and these two are going to be. This is the start of what's going to be potentially career-long rivalries for these two, which is really cool to think about. These two real lightning-quick high flyers, and yeah, this match is going to be an absolute banger.
And like for me, I love the way they've built it. With I guess as you were saying, that they've had those interactions before, but it was that spark, the moment that sparked it all, when Guevara slammed Darby Allin's neck down on the skateboard, and we didn't see him for a few weeks. Oh, as I hit my soundboard. Yeah, so it was only 2 or 3 weeks, but when he returned, the crowd were already going crazy. It was just that's insane. He was taken out for 3 weeks. They did those videos where he nicked Sammy Guevara. Again, that makes it, with the Darby Allin nicking the signs thing that Sammy Guevara does, that makes it look like that was the reason Guevara did it in the first place, was to then build up to Darby Allin then doing it. That probably wasn't the case, but the fact it ties in so strongly, it's I love it. It's well done. So the fact that...
And the way they built it with the vignettes while he was off... that's something that doesn't happen. I really don't want to try. I'm trying not to talk about WWE, but it's impossible not to throw comparisons, because that's something WWE used to do a lot. They haven't really done it as much, lately. I can't remember the last time I've seen it. But it's super effective. And as you said, when Darby Allin returned, blew the roof off.
Yeah. So especially as it feels like it's Darby Allin who made those videos, so it's like a direct message to Guevara from him. And the idea of, well, if he's had his neck slammed down, therefore he might not be able to talk. So whilst he's healing, instead of talking, he uses Sammy Guevara's method as it's so good. Does every week Darby Allin.
And as well, they've sort of bounced this off the Jon Moxley Chris Jericho feud as well, and it really suits Darby Allin and Jon Moxley's characters to be sort of interacting and in the same world. You wouldn't call them friends, but sort of allies and two like-minded people up against, looking after one another's backs almost a little bit.
Yeah, if it's whenever the other person runs out to, I say aid, it's more because they're running out for their own agenda, and Darby Allin goes straight for Guevara, and Moxley goes straight for Jericho as well. Neither person is really out there to help the other. It's more to get their enemy, and it turns into
But you can still see the mutual respect, though.
Yeah.
Through and that comes from previous matches Jon Moxley and Darby Allin have had that weren't related, but now sort of show a story of Moxley Moxley and Darby Allen developing this mutual respect. And, I mean, I don't know how far you want to take it, but you also see videos of Darby Allen and Jon Moxley, hanging out together on the cruise of Jericho. And of course, that's starting to blend in real life, but at the same time, it's like, well, there's no photos of Jon Moxley hanging out with Chris Jericho on the cruise. He's there. It's just like very cool how they've, they're slowly just bringing these threads together. And yeah, as you said, with the signs, they've now given Darby Allen's the signs, which bounces off what Sammy Guevara was doing with the signs before, which was completely separate, but has now become part of the feud.
Like, I felt a bit harsh comparing AEW to WWE these past couple of weeks, especially as these are the last two shows building into the pay-per-view, with the stories built for months finally coming to like a head. So it's going to feel way bigger than WWE, who are essentially just getting going in that with WrestleMania. And it's one of those where they've built it so damn well, and you see it on Twitter. When you see that kind of consensus reach where people are just like, it's like people trying to remember when was the last time a pay-per-view had so many matches so well built on it for such like a solid card from start to bottom. And yeah, it's all the work that goes in. It takes time to get to this. You don't get to this point without that time and effort. You don't get to here without those earlier weeks of people saying, oh, there's no stories. Well, they are. It's just not the style of storytelling that anybody's really used to, especially if you only watch WWE. I think that's a key thing here. People who watched more, and maybe grew like me, where I grew a bit tired of WWE, so I checked elsewhere, and that really revitalised my fandom, and therefore I get used to different styles. This slower build with New Japan was one of those styles I came across, and that meant with AEW I was way more accustomed to what was going on. Compared to if you'd only watched WWE, you're used to like rapid fire storytelling, and subtlety is not one of those things that they really do. If it's part of the feud, they'll let you know. Type of thing. Like, it's really easy to follow in WWE. In AEW, there'll be a little thing that won't be brought up for like weeks down the line. For me, the example is Hangman Page, where they were doing those little things, and slowly over time they built to a point where now they've been addressing it head on. Like,
or even Jake Hager versus Dustin Rhodes. Like, how long ago was it that I can't even remember when it was that they broke Dustin Rhodes' arm. I think it was like the second or third Dynamite.
Yeah.
We're up to the 20th now, and they only really re-picked up that string a few weeks ago. But still, it's, it comes from that.
Yeah, I think that was the Tony Schiavone limo episode with Cody, because it was a limo door they slammed it with. And MJF is still with him, because MJF... I remember when Dustin was like down on the floor, MJF...
Yeah, it was ages ago.
Yeah, like when MJF walks into shot, he checks he's in the shot first, looking at the camera, then goes to Dustin. It's like the little things like that, which like they get addressed here, like months down the line, but they're little things where at the point... Like my Hangman Page example was he was constantly drinking, or he'd always have a drink with him, but it wasn't until this episode where we directly heard somebody address it, which is like, did you have to bring the drink to the interview, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But we've all seen.
And I think I think it all shows the value of having scarcity in your pay-per-views. These guys only have 5 pay-per-views a year, so they get time to build things to things, whereas with the WWE they've got a lot more. And so it just means that they have to be more rapid fire with how they do things. It's part of their operating model that they've set up, and it does mean that they go through things quickly. It means you get big matches more regularly potentially, but I really like the way that something like Darby Allen versus Sammy Guevara, it's not a headline feud, it's a mid-card thing, but every week something is inching along in this story, even if they don't have a match.
Yes. And that's kind of like the magic of it. Like Cody versus MJF, they weren't on the show this week, but they showed that vignette just to kind of remind you of everything, and that carried it along, which is what they were doing with Darby Allin as well. When he's not on the show, you play a vignette just to make sure everybody knows he is going to be relevant. And I love the slower build. In terms of me as a wrestling fan as well, I'd like as much difference between the two companies as possible. And for me, rapid fire storytelling and nice, slow playing it out, that creates such a different feeling when you watch the two, that I am all for WWE. If they are perfectly fine just to stick with what they're doing, I can enjoy AEW. Like, they don't have to become more like AEW for me to, I guess, still have my enjoyment, because they're different. It just means I'll probably drop SmackDown at some point. Read my column this week. You might understand why. But in terms of the actual result of Allen versus Guevara, I guess first off, does it really matter? And secondly, what do you actually think might happen?
This is probably a really hard one to pick, because I can just think of so many reasons either one could win. I don't think it particularly matters for either of them. I think this is a starting point for their what could potentially be a career-long feud for these two young guys. If I had to pick, I'd probably say Darby Allen, just because he's a big star. But I think him winning will put him in a really good position to go forward to something else. And Sammy Guevara, because he's got the inner circle with Jericho and all this other stuff, I don't think he really needs to necessarily get a win and to progress onto something else, whereas Darby Allen does. But then again, it would probably suit Darby Allen's character absolutely fantastically if he was to lose. I'd have to make my pick Darby Allen, but I'm expecting, Rich Ladder Pro Wrestling all over the shop. This is going to be fast. It's going to be furious. Hopefully they get, only 10 or 15 minutes. Like, they give them a shorter time frame to work in, and then it can just be balls to the walls and, really, really fun and awesome.
But maybe even kicking off the show, like levels of just rapid fire.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty similar. Maybe you have Darby Allin. He is one of those where he tries to do something a little bit too much and takes himself out. That would also be in Darby Allin's character, like that Jeff Hardy thing. Sammy Guevara, it's weird with Sammy Guevara, because I'm like, but it would make sense for the bad guy to get the win because of the long-term AEW. But then I'm like, it's also AEW. And from what I've seen, I wouldn't be surprised if that thing of, but Sammy Guevara's the bad guy now. Will he always be a bad guy? That's in terms of, if you're thinking really, I don't know how long-term they're thinking. They're saying that everybody's got like really long storylines playing out. They know where they're going with it, which gives you the opportunity to put in these little things and build it when you know where you're going with it, instead of like doing it week to week or month to month. If you're doing these long arcs, then you can put in little things. Like when people write a TV show like Westworld, because I'm watching that, season 3 is coming out soon. When you watch Westworld, they drop in things. Like especially when you rewatch it, you realise how much hints and things they drop in. But that's because they know where they're going with it. They've written the story. They're not making it up as they go along. So you can drop in hints and things that all link up. And maybe if you rewatch it, you'll realise how much of it actually all links together, and how something like they blatantly told you, or you saw something, you just didn't know you were seeing it. It's like, I love that kind of thing. But with we've just got so used to WWE where it's month to month, so you don't get any of that. And if they do, it's I've forgotten the word. It's like retroactive. I don't know if that's a word. Where they will essentially in the future they'll make it relevant when it wasn't really designed to be relevant at all, when it happened way back when. That doesn't feel like that with the AEW. I'm thinking in my head about the Hangman Page angle like the entire time I'm speaking now. Just the amount of stuff just dropped in because they knew where they were going with it. And this pay-per-view isn't the end point for it. This is like the next beat in the story because they know where they're going with it. It's such a different style of storytelling that I don't know if I feel really hyped because we've not seen it for so long. I think that's part of it. Like, they're not doing anything remarkable or out of this world. It's just they're doing storytelling. And this is what storytelling is. And it's just nice to see again. I think that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of consistency.
Yes.
I would say it's very consistent.
Also, everybody watch Westworld. I love it.
Never seen it.
TV show. The film's all right. Yeah, I liked the film before the TV show came out. Then, sure, bit of a bias because it has got Anthony Hopkins in it. So for me, that just lifts it. Just like, his lovely Welsh tones. I clapped on the Welsh language in a reply to a comment, so I have to like elevate them again. Just to say, no, I love the accent. It's fine.
Oh, how dare you?
Anyway, so moving on to Pac versus Orange Cassidy. In terms of like, are there two characters who couldn't be any more polar opposites in the divisions? With the super serious honey badger that will gnaw your bastard face off. Sorry, there goes monetization. But I love that line from Pac.
Such a good line.
Versus Orange Cassidy, and I loved Chuck Taylor's quip after the match where he was interviewed by Tony Schiavone. It's like, well, joke's on you, Pac, because this time he's going to try. And Trent just like, he's not said it, that's not guaranteed. No, no, we can't confirm that. Don't come in expecting him to try, guys. It's just, it's such an intriguing matchup, and the pop from the crowd when this was revealed, like, my word, Orange Cassidy, there's a lot of people online that seem to like, what is this guy? But he is so over. He's so popular. Again, he's a guy where before AEW I'd become a fan. Is an amazing. I was expecting it to play out like this on the show, where the bunny took off his glasses, and then he just took off her ears, which was so much better than what I was expecting to happen. But because on the Indies he did a spot where the opponent took off his glasses, so then he just pulled out another pair of glasses, and then the guy took those off, snapped them in anger, so then he put on a third pair of glasses. Every time he just replaced them, and the guy became more and more infuriated. That was just great. But yeah, so I've been a fan of Orange Cassidy for like before AEW, so I've got that bias in me already because I support him. It's not really a bias. I enjoy the guy. So I knew coming in that I would enjoy what he's doing on AEW. Putting him with Pac is fantastic. Because either Pac beats the crap out of him because he doesn't take it seriously, where you've still got that card in your pocket for when he does try, he'll be amazing. Or this is the first time we generally do see Orange Cassidy try and it surprises Pac. Like, either road I'm perfectly fine with, because it's that, again, that long-term build of you're still building up Orange Cassidy for when he actually does try. It's just how long do you postpone it? And it builds up Pac as that serious competitor who's just pissed at this jokey guy dead to just get in his face, and Pac's going to teach him a lesson. Yeah. Yeah,
look, I'm definitely not as bought in as you are in terms of this match in Orange Cassidy. I'm definitely going in with an open mind because I haven't seen a lot of Orange Cassidy, to be honest. But it seems like this is a very big step for Orange Cassidy's presentation, and I'd almost say it's almost bordering on absurd, and bordering on universe breaking for AEW. So this match could be a problem. It could be a problem. I'm saying this now, I'm going in with an open mind because I don't know what to expect, but I'm kind of worried about it because I've never seen him as a serious wrestler. He's never been presented as a serious wrestler, and he's going up against the serious wrestler in like the most serious wrestler in AEW, and a guy who's just gone toe to toe with supposedly the guy that they say is the greatest wrestler in the world, Kenny Omega, and he's just gone toe to toe with him in an Iron Man match for half an hour. And Orange Cassidy he's over, absolutely. The crowd love him. I enjoy his little stick. I'm not saying his stick is bad, but putting him up against someone who is on the level that Pac is a very risky move if they don't pull it off. Now, I trust AEW enough that I'll give them my open mind and my faith that they can do it because that's why I love why I've bought into AEW before it started, because I've followed the Elite and I know that I trust that they will present something that I'll enjoy. But boy, this is one that that I'm giving side eyes to be honest. And yeah, I want to stress I'm definitely going in with an open mind. I'm not trying to shit all over it. Sorry, there goes monetization.
It's already gone.
I'm not trying to poop all over this before it even happens and hate it before it happens. Because I'd be happy to be surprised. And I know that Orange Cassidy's got a match up with Minoru Suzuki lined up for another show on the WrestleMania weekend. So obviously it's something that is not he's confident he can do. But yeah, boy, this one's something they're going to have to do well.
So I feel like quite often on YouTube when I'm censoring myself, it feels like I'm doing like a PG era WWE promo. Like, you are a stupid butt face. Like,
Poopy.
Can we even say booby? I don't even know that. Seriously, as a laugh, I do recommend everybody check out the list of words that people found out get you either like demonetized or featured less. Like the list of stuff on YouTube in the kind of that I've proven to actually detract. It's hilarious. Some of them. It's just like you can't mention like any real life like negative big thing. Otherwise, that's it, gone. Which is kind of like that's hilarious to me. It's just like I keep forgetting. I'm not going to like the advertising standards that I've grown up with that I'm used to. It's the American daytime television. It kind of levels the standards. So it's taken me a little while to get used to it and to not swear. It's just in my normal vocabulary. We don't have the same things over here. Like my brother's wife.
Just thinking, would they say it on EastEnders? Would they say it on Coronation Street?
I mean, the way I picture EastEnders is just people going back and forth going, "You slag! No, you slag!" If you can't tell, I don't watch EastEnders. It's like, it's not worth it, Darren. I like to take the piss out of it. Like, anyway, so for me, this would be the point to have Orange Cassidy be serious because we've not seen him be serious, and on pay-per-view against Pac, either Pac brings it out of him, or he generally tries and he generally takes it seriously. He can maybe try and draw Pac in by seeming like he won't. I'll be fine with that. But if he generally takes it seriously, I feel like this is a really good point to test that out. Especially as he's so over. Like, why not?
It will blow the roof off if he does, I think.
Yeah, well, if you saw the first reactions to when he just hit a move, like because he was coming out doing nothing for those first couple of months, and then he just hit a move, and the crowd went absolutely crazy. And I loved it seeing some fan reactions on Twitter. It's like, oh, what is this crap? And then like one of the wrestlers saying, he has figured out wrestling. He takes no bumps, maximum reaction. Like he has figured it out. He's figured out wrestling, Orange Cassidy. Congratulations. That's what Orange Cassidy is a performer figuring out how to do wrestling without taking any bumps. It's genius. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that one, but I am with Sam where this could be the point, just like a little bit, this could be a point where if they don't nail the presentation, then this could backfire a bit. We could see Orange Cassidy's popularity kind of find a niche rather than be this thing that could explode. You can always like go back and then spend time again building it back up, and it can easily work that way, like we've seen with Hangman Page. But with Cassidy, this could easily be the point to put it onto that next step, and it'll be a really big step because of who Pac is as well. So excited, but also semi-cautious. But again, I've believed in AEW with the long form stuff. It's got me excited. Next up, SoCal Uncensored of Kazarian and Sky, joined by Christopher Daniels, versus the Dark Order, Uno and Grayson, and they're going to have, I think they're called Alex Reynolds and John Silver. That's their names. They're going to have them by them at ringside as well. There's a whole Exalted One. Do we see the Exalted One at the pay-per-view? I can't remember what Evil Uno said in his promo last night, but they're hyping up the Exalted One coming. The question, of course...
They are playing us hard
yes.
with the Exalted One, because they've been talking about how everybody dies, which thinks it's Lance Archer. They've been talking about on AEW just this... last week on Dynamite, this week that we just saw, he said obsolete. So obviously trying to like wink at Matt Hardy. They're playing us. They're taking us for a ride. So who knows who it's going to be?
The whole string of things of like Brody, the former Luke Harper, just putting random stuff and them doing little teasers. Last week with Raven just sat in the crowd during the segment and they brawled in front of him. And of course, Raven did the voiceover for like one of the Dark Order vignettes earlier when he was playing. He played the Exalted One as a voiceover, which is like just an ultimate red herring. It's just like, that's very, very clever because it's not going to be him. But yeah, so he was in the crowd last week. And he got all the little hints to it being Matt Hardy that have played out over this next week. And it makes you forget that they have gone through like 3 people. And then, of course, they've announced that Lance Archer will be... They announced he was Elite this week. I don't know if they said he'll be on AEW like immediately next week, but they hyped up next week and then they hyped up Lance Archer, so I've linked them in my head. I can't remember what they said.
And Evil Uno actually did a tweet that strongly sort of suggested it could be Lance Archer as well. I think he said, where is it? I'm just
something like
flicking
everybody
through
lives, everybody dies, which is Lance Archer's
that was it.
line.
Everybody dies is Lance Archer's thing. So
taking us for a ride. They're just, it's like
it's great, isn't it?
Like they see every person that is being thrown out, so they've dropped in hints for all of them. So it could be any of them, which. No, that's really smart. Somebody came up with the idea of... I can't remember which Twitter handle it was on Twitter, so I can't give props to them. But it's the idea of put Dark Order masks on the week the Exalted One arrives, put Dark Order masks under everybody's seat, and somehow give the signal for when it's the Exalted One's return time for everybody to put the mask on. So then when the lights come up and everyone's wearing a Dark Order mask, we're like, oh, that would be an amazing visual to do that kind of thing. I think they've tried it in... WWE did a kind of... I swear one episode it was like a Rey Mysterio mask episode thing where they did something and loads of people were wearing masks and it was awesome. I don't know if I'm just completely making something up. But I want to...
Years and years ago... Ring of Honor did a thing called Age of the Fall, where they had like a lot of audience stuff going on. That was a long time ago now, though. That was like 2009. It was Tyler Black.
Oh, that was a long time ago. There was a match in the Young Bucks era, I'll call it, of Ring of Honor, where they do the like fans bring your own weapons matches, which I am hyped as hell for the MJF match where that happens. I feel like it's a given. It is a given that down the line that will be a stip. It's just people get to attack MJF with a weapon. It's like, oh yes, it's such a cool thing. But yeah, so I don't know. I'm not expecting the Exalted One to appear on pay-per-view. I feel like that will be a television thing to give a pop to everybody to then talk about it on Twitter. This for me is going to be the Dark Order sending that message they said they were going to send. To tease it being Christopher Daniels, which will be the next thing, because that was the other name thrown about, because of course the whole Fallen Angel gimmick he did in the noughties, and it's Christopher Daniels. He's flip-flopped over his career quite often, and now he's in that later stage. And Chima, where Chima was given a Dark Order mask and he didn't throw it away. It was like, ooh, mask, and then then walks away in I think the mini ball. But yeah, so they've teased heavily as well that it could be Christopher Daniels to add his name to the list. So I feel like that's kind of the point of this match, is to throw another red herring in Christopher Daniels and to steer the on-television kind of story in Christopher Daniels' direction, which is like extremely necessary for when they do the reveal and it's somebody else. But Christopher Daniels will be toying with that idea of he's past his prime, maybe he should go to the Dark Order or something like that. Yeah.
Well, and as a meta thing, and I'm stealing this off another podcast I listen to called Watching the Elite. Christopher Daniels backstage is the talent coordinator, so it kind of fits with the idea that like he is recruiting people and he's got his own little cult that he's sort of potentially made up, and he recruits people and pushes them towards that. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like that's an interesting bit of synchronicity and synergy with sort of almost a more meta angle for this story.
Oh, and the other touch is the guy from the vignettes actually showing up at the shows as well. Yeah, that's a
yes.
It weirdly gives importance to the segment. It's like, oh, he's here. That must be important. it's a minor thing. It's having him so tightly tied to the Exalted One that it gives the segment importance when and you don't have to do anything else. Just him being there. It's really smart. So yeah, that's what I predict will happen. Is this will be like the Dark Order show? I don't know. Are you expecting SCU to pull the upset again?
No, I'm not. Although they could probably use the win, to be honest. They haven't really set the world alight since they lost their tag belts. But the focus of the tag division story, the sort of mid-card tag division, so to speak, is the Dark Order at the moment. So I expect them to pick up the win to lay the groundwork for the Exalted One to appear, whoever that may be.
Oh, and this is another fantastic example of them not nailing a segment at all, then going back to the drawing board and taking their time to build something back up and see if it will work in this way. And for me, this is like that next stage in seeing has their rebuild worked. Going in, it feels like it has. So it's just, I'm interested to see, and especially with the Exalted One hype and the mystery of who that is, that's really helping the Dark Order right now. I'll be interested because that could be the point where the whole kind of collection themselves it feels like this is the Dark Order, the new image, the thing that finally arrived. They can jump off from here. It's just can they continue to build to that relatively well or not? But now we get to our, I guess, inner circle and elite members fighting off against each other. Jake Hager versus Dustin Rhodes. We brought this up a little bit earlier, going all the way back to whenever that limo episode was. And
it was like episode 2 or 3. It was very early on.
And Jake Hager slammed Dustin Rhodes' arm in the limousine, which, if I'm right, is something Arn Anderson did to somebody way back in the Four Horsemen's days. So it was one of those things.
Of course it is.
Yeah. So it's a mixture of like a lot of the booking staff being massive fans of that era of like NWA and WCW or WCCW going way back.
Cody Rhodes just wants to be wrestling in Mid-South. Yeah. Let's just face it.
So it's like a callback.
In the 80s.
It's one of those massive callbacks, and of course it ties in so well that they've done little stabs at Arn Anderson. It's like, oh, you'll want to talk, kind of things. Oh, you remember?
Yeah.
So it's, but yeah, it's one of those that's had such the long build as well. And Hager is another person who hasn't wrestled. Like, this is his actual debut in AEW. So I'm generally interested to see how this plays out. Do they incorporate, because they've played him off as this MMA fighter, Jake Hager, is undefeated in the MMA. Does he just come out in his swagger suit and just wrestle like I've always seen him wrestle? Like, even when he came out as the We the People, he still wrestled like Jack Swagger without really anything new. So with this, I'm interested to see, like, does he still wrestle in that same style, or does he incorporate a bit more MMA? Like we saw with Brock Lesnar, where he was that awesome athletic beast way back when, but when he came back after his MMA influence, the whole package clicked. And I feel like Jake Hager could be that, where if incorporating that next style can help. Of course, I've not seen it, so I say it could be that. It's just that Swagger by himself, if he just goes out there and wrestles like he always did as Jack Swagger, I'm not quite sure that'll work for this character, and it might feel like a bit like a step back. And I don't know, because I was never the biggest fan of Jack Swagger. So as much as I liked his gut wrench powerbomb, I was never really the biggest fan. So for me, if he just goes out there and wrestles that same style without any MMA influence, and it's still that amateur wrestling more than it is brawly. I think that's what I'm saying. I'd like a bit more brawl in this character than the amateur wrestler that he was in WWE. Yeah. Are you on the same boat, or it doesn't matter?
Yeah, I'd say Jack Swagger is a guy who's always just been missing just a little bit of something extra. I think the best match I've ever seen him have was against Big E Langston. There's a bit of a throwback. It was for the IC title, and they just beat the crap out of each other. And I think that's what I'd like to see here is, and I think maybe that adding a bit of that MMA edge to his presentation. I don't want to see Suplex City.
Oh no.
But maybe adding some more vicious strikes, like he's been throwing pretty stiff-looking knees to Dustin Rhodes' groin. But, incorporating things like that and incorporating a little bit of the grit of a fight that a fighter can bring, that a real fighter can bring, could be, and I would like to see him repackaged as well. It would be good if he came out in MMA gear, maybe in the shorts or the trunks. And I don't know about the gloves. You don't want to be too close to Brock Lesnar, because you immediately draw those comparisons and people will bring them. But I do think he is a guy who has always lacked that little extra something, and potentially that viciousness, being the viciousness of a real fighter. And the commentators do a great job of hyping him up as that. I think that could be a really good, potentially the way that he, maybe finally clicks and really becomes the guy they wanted him to be. Because he was great in the WWE, and I'm not trying to bury him or throw shade at him, but he never reached the level that they wanted him to reach, and I think it was evident in his presentation that he was never going to get there with what he had, and maybe this is what tips him over the edge, hopefully. And I fully expect him to come out and, Dustin Rhodes will put up a brave showing as a veteran, but I fully expect him to absolutely steamroll Dustin Rhodes.
Yeah, and Dustin Rhodes is the perfect guy to do that too. Like
Yep.
They've used the veterans really well, as in like their age storylines rather than being it.
Yep.
And
yep.
That this is for me. This is the perfect example of, whilst I accidentally stuttered, like I was going to say that song because I can't remember its name. Good tangent, Imp. But so with Jake Hager feels like the perfect person to destroy Dustin Rhodes, and Dustin Rhodes is aiding the wider storylines without again being it. Jake Hager is more of the present day. He's more tied to it. Who, to be fair, himself, Jake Hager is on the side of the main acts, on the main story guys, and having him destroy Dustin Rhodes makes all the sense in the world. It doesn't feel like MJF Wardlow, where it feels like Wardlow is gonna, I was going to say get Batista'd, but I mean, it's like he's the guy who feels like he's going to get built and built and built and eventually surpass MJF, and that's when MJF, he starts to feel threatened by Wardlow's rise. That's what it feels like it's going to happen. I don't get that with Jake Hager. I don't know if I saw like one tweet, because I noticed it when we were watching. When Chris Jericho's walking to the ring, the shoulder that Jake Hager put his hand on Jericho was the title. So it's just like, it's one of those little things where you can use that if you want, but no, Jake Hager just screams that he's doing that to generally protect it on Jericho's shoulder. He doesn't feel like, oh, title strokey. It's not like that. And for me, this is getting Jake Hager over, and he destroys Dustin Rhodes. I think it is because as well, this character feels so far away from Swagger. I think that's why I don't want to see that amateur wrestling kind of stuff that he's doing in WWE.
Yep. Because
this character feels so far away, the next thing is to have his wrestling style also be so far away. Like, I guess like with Austin. Yep. When Austin committed to that character, he became way more brawly. And that's the thing, that really sold it. This is the whole package. I'm not saying that Jake Hager is going to be the next Stone Cold Steve Austin. Get off your horse. I'm just saying, when you do the character, you kind of got to commit to it all round. And I was trying to think, there are like Finn Balor. The biggest thing that took me away from some of the Demon stuff was that he wrestled the same. Like maybe he did a little bit of movement slightly different, but when he wrestled as the Demon, he wrestled as the same guy. That kind of took it away from me every time, which is a lesson they seem to have slightly learnt with The Fiend, is when he wrestles, the way he walks and everything is entirely different. He's got some of the same... Oh, are you tangenting Imp? Just to explain it a bit more. Yeah, for me, Jake Hager, because they're putting him over as this MMA guy, he can't go in there and do amateur wrestling. He can't go in there in his Kurt Angle onesie. he can do suplexes or whatever. He
can't go in there and be Jack Swagger.
Correct, yeah. He's got to be Jake Hager. Like, Steve Austin wasn't a Hollywood blonde style of wrestling when he was doing Steve Austin. Like, he adapted to this new character, this new style. I feel like that's what Jake Hager's got to present here. And it makes you feel special as well if you save it for pay-per-view or special occasions like Wardlow. Yeah, that's what... Yeah, we seem to be on the same page with this one. Just the kind of mid-card, build-up Hager, Dustin Rhodes, perfect guy to do it. So I'm deciding which order to do these in, because all three of these next matches are the three stories that have been built up for such a long time, and they've all been absolutely nailed. I think this is what gives this pay-per-view that feeling of like how much depth there is. Is like, has there been a pay-per-view so well built? It's off of these 3 matches. So first up, Kenny Omega and Adam Page defending their tag team championships against the Young Bucks. This has been, I love the slow build of this. I don't know. Actually, I know you love it as well. I'll give you the reins to kind of talk about this match overall for the start.
Yeah, well, look, I really like how Kenny Omega and Adam Page, they sort of almost came together by accident, but gelled well and managed to get to the point where they're champions, and that fulfilled that long-term sort of goal that they planted for Adam Page, where he said, I'd never been a champion and my goal is to become the first AEW champion. Obviously, he didn't win the championship when he fought Chris Jericho, and he then went on to win the tag championship. But then the day after, if obviously this was on Being the Elite, the day after, it wasn't all that he thought it would be. He was like, oh wow, this was not the amazing thing I thought it would be. And that's something that a lot of champions in real sports have said, is particularly in combat sports. I follow MMA fairly closely, less now than I used to, but one of the things that a number of the champions in that have said is they win the championship and it's the biggest letdown of their life, because they have a great moment, but then the day after they don't feel any different. And they expected that they would, because they've fulfilled this massive goal that they've given themselves. And then that's manifested in Adam Page wanting to distance himself from the Elite. His own disgruntled feelings towards himself and towards his situation that he's in has manifested in himself drinking more and also kind of trying to move away from the Elite, while the Elite are trying to drag him back in, it's really interesting. And then, of course, you've got the dynamic of Kenny Omega fighting with the Young Bucks, who are, these are the guys that put this company together. These are the guys that for so long worked together and cornered one another. The Elite was Kenny Omega, Matt Jackson, and Nick Jackson. That was the original The Elite. And now they're going to be fighting over the AEW championships, which the Young Bucks probably rightfully feel entitled to. They are the guys that long term, or at least at the start, you'd be like, these are your number one tag. This is your number one tag team, Matt Jackson and Nick Jackson, and they haven't been able to win the championship up to this point, and now who are the champions? They're friends who beat them to it. And there's just so much going on here, and they've built it for so long with Matt and Nick Jackson wanting to win the titles, and Kenny Omega and Adam Page in particular fighting for their own relevancy. And working together really well, and slowly building up as a team and building some team maneuvers. And now the Elite are going to implode. And you've also got tension within the team of Adam Page and Kenny Omega, in that Adam Page is a bit pissed off at Kenny Omega, to be frank, at how Parker's distracted him. And I fully expect this Iron Man match that Kenny Omega agreed to play into the finish of this match.
Yeah.
I'll let you take over from here, Imp. I've kind of given it a big long spiel.
The interview this week with Jim Ross and sitting them down, for me, that really kind of painted the entire storyline to this point really, really well. Especially as it's one of those things where Cody Rhodes has said he doesn't want, when he does his wrestling, he doesn't want it to be black and white, good guy versus bad guy, heel versus face. And you see quite a lot of pushback as well, what do you mean this guy's clearly a bad guy, this guy's clearly heel? And I feel like this is the example where people are like, who is going to turn in this match? And for me, that's not the question. It's if Adam Page turns, it's not turning as in he's turned bad guy. He could when I say he could turn on the Elite, he's already said, I'm trying to leave and you guys won't let me. And that's what I mean by turn, is that maybe there's a moment in this match where he has enough and he does something to exemplify, guys, I want to leave. And they're like, well, we're your friends, we don't want you to leave, kind of. And Adam Page and his drunkenness. The best villains for me are where you can see where they're coming from, and for me, Adam Page doesn't have to become a villain to create drama. He can just want to leave and feel like they're not listening to him, and for me, that is enough to create an interesting character. Because I think that's what Cody might have been going for, was characters, not straight up good guys and bad guys. And I 100% agree, like the best shows, it's not that black and white. It is way more complicated. Again, kind of mirroring real life a bit more. As television's kind of shifted that way anyway. I was replying to one of my commenters this week, and that topic did come up. Of it, like in like mainstream wrestling, one of the things that's kind of, it's a little pet peeve of mine, is they've been at their peak when they've mirrored what, like, I guess the rest of television and society is kind of wanting at that point. Like the Attitude Era represented really well what people wanted in that time. Rock and wrestling, the same thing. Modern day, they're not. It's like when we say that they're not listening, they're not really representing what the era is kind of demanding and asking. I feel like AEW is. And part of that is more complex characters. That is where TV has shifted. And for AEW to make that shift, it's because that's where television has gone. For some reason, WWE don't want to go there. They want to stick with what they've trusted for so long. But television's shifted. And AEW, in terms of these more complex characters, that feels like it fits today way better than anything WWE is doing. I'm not saying everything WWE do is bad. I'm saying that AEW is seemingly representing the era of television and fitting in way better by doing this kind of thing, where it's more complex characters. You get drama from the characters clashing rather than good guy, bad guy straight up. Yes, there are still good guys and bad guys, but it's way more complex than that.
Yeah, it's fully three-dimensional characters with different motivations. Yeah. And, you know, Adam Page's motivation is to stay champion. And Kenny Omega's motivation is to stay champion. But his motivation is has also been to his friends. And to this feud he's got with Puck. And so potentially they've got Adam Page and Kenny Omega have conflict because Adam Page's motivation is to just stay champion. Kenny Omega's got a whole bunch of other things on his plate that he's been trying to attend to. So Adam Page could be like, look, mate, I'm giving everything to this. You're not. 2 days before, 3 days for, what is it? Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. 4 days before our live maths with Sam. 4 days before our, the biggest match of our tag team history so far against the Young Bucks, the people that you say are the greatest tag team ever. You're fighting a 30-minute Iron Man match against Puck, and not only doing that, but then going into extra time as well. How seriously are you treating this when this, for me, is the biggest thing I've ever won? It's the biggest thing I've ever done. And so, that's not necessarily a bad guy to point that out because it's true.
Well, it was when they had that exchange where the Young Bucks, in trying to unite them, was saying there's nothing more important than the Elite. And just Hangman Page going, well, for you, this is just another title. For me, this is the biggest point in my career, and then that led on to him just bringing up that he's tried to leave the Elite, and that proves every point that he's trying to make. It's just like, he's not a bad guy, especially as like the cowboy S word because we're on YouTube. We've already failed. I'll stick with it anyway. So with the cowboy S word is so popular that it wouldn't make sense to just flat out turn him into major bad guy, do ultimate complete flip. It's like, no, in terms of...
and he's been able to get over with that.
Yeah, and you can keep him over and keep him that complex, just make him more of that complex character where his motivations and where he's coming from are totally understandable. And it also works with the Young Bucks, where they've got their motivations, and it's totally understandable from their side as well. And both sides maybe just aren't seeing something from the others, and that's causing a massive clash. It's yes, I love it. It's way more complex than just, we're going to honourably go for the titles, and we're going to have a good old fight, aren't we? Shake hands. Yes, we are both baby faces. Yes, shake hands. Oh, lovely. You don't see this in WWE because, again, this is not, they don't write this way. Which, again, that's not a knock on them. It's just not how they write. But you wouldn't get like two babyface teams versus each other unless somebody was turning. And I feel like that is more why people are expecting a turn, because of the wrestling world and way of writing that we are used to. We are used to, if we get two babyface teams against each other on pay-per-view with a build, one of them is turning. But that's not how AEW write. So that's why I'm not expecting a turn. I'm expecting the next beat in the story, or the next kind of massive blow, as in the blow-off moment which sparks or triggers the next thing. Which could just be Page versus Omega, but it doesn't have to be a heel turn. It could just be, this is the exploding moment. As I said earlier, it could be Page doing something which is just like, guys, I want to leave. It could be something like that. But again,
and as to the actual match, sorry.
I had ended my point, and I was for some reason trying to find the next thing, and now I've interrupted Sam, who actually had a point.
And as to the actual match, in terms of what you're talking about, I think the template for this, it's pretty obvious, is the Golden Lovers versus the Young Bucks match. So that's, for those who don't know, that's Kenny Omega and Kota Ibushi versus the Young Bucks that happened in 2018, just before Kenny Omega's match against Okada, when there was a lot of tension within the Bullet Club, a lot of tension about who was the leader, and the fight between Kenny Omega and Cody was sort of dividing the Young Bucks up as well. And in this amazingly emotional match of absolute high drama, one of the best tag matches I've ever seen, Kenny Omega and Kota Ibushi went to war with the Young Bucks. And yeah, incredible high drama, and I expect no less here. Of course, Adam Page, he's not Kota Ibushi, but he's pretty damn good. And he's gelling well with Kenny Omega. He has ridden with these four guys have ridden together for so long. I expect absolute wrestling, pure wrestling, soap opera and drama, but also, amazing wrestling as well. Look at the people involved: Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, Adam Page. They're absolutely top class workers. So I'm really looking forward to this match and seeing what they can do with this story. And it won't just be, a Young Bucks versus Lucha Bros match, which is, sort of all based on the moves. There'll be story running all throughout this as these friends and, confidants and really close long-term allies go to war.
And speaking of story, MJF versus Cody in a swift transition.
Oh, who's going to win? Before we go on to that, who's going to win? What's going to happen?
I think it depends on what Hangman does. And what that is, I feel like this is a good thing that it's unpredictable. I don't know what he does. Does he do something which then causes the win? So Kenny Omega and Page stay tag team champions, but Omega from here on is pissed at Page? Or he does something and that costs them the titles. Like he full on falls out with Omega kind of thing. Or there's a mistake and they just lose. It could even be that, to be fair. Or Page goes to a place that Omega isn't comfortable with. Something akin to that. But as you brought with the Golden Lovers, like Kenny Omega is willing to go to that extra length to kind of prove something and to stay as those champions. As they were saying, it's part of the business. Like, they are perfectly fine with full on going against each other in competition. Like, there's no issue there. But Page is so desperate to stay champion. What does he do? So the answer is, I don't know, Sam. I've got no idea. I'm looking at this more as it's the story of Adam Page more than it is who's going to be champion. That's the important thing. Of course, the stakes on the line, but I'm really invested in the Page storyline more than I am who's champion, because it could go multiple routes with this.
Here's my pitch. So until just this afternoon, actually, I was picking the Young Bucks to win this. However, when I started thinking about it, I feel like the first time the Young Bucks win this championship, it needs to be a real celebration. It should be a real joyous moment, and it won't be if they win this match. If they win this match, it's not going to be the really happy. It'll be, emotional, but it won't be the really happy, exciting moment that, where they've fought against, the Lucha Bros or the proud and powerful, genuine scoundrels who you want to see lose. So I'm picking Kenny Omega and Adam Page to win. But, and this is the but, what happens is Adam Page goes a bit far in his attacking of Matt and Nick Jackson. He decides he needs to make up for Kenny Omega's weakness because Kenny Omega's tired and unable to, go back to back from this Iron Man match. And that's what drives Adam Page. So they win, but it drives a further wedge between Kenny Omega, Adam Page, and the Elite.
Ooh.
So that'd be my pick. And as I said, until this afternoon, I was thinking it was definitely going to be the Young Bucks with Adam Page, blaming Kenny Omega essentially for the loss. But I'm going to say Adam Page is going to win it for his team and still take it out on Kenny Omega, though.
I feel like whatever happens, the Elite will not be fine. Here's what I take away from this. I know how big a fan of Bullet Club is fine angle. Sam is. So next up, we talked about a massive story and high emotion in a match to go from one to another. MJF, who will be accompanied by Wardlow, versus Cody, who will have Arn Anderson by his side in the story which kicked off. Well, I guess the story's being built underneath as soon as Dynamite started. But it's that story of... even before then, when Cody just met MJF. They immediately started having this story of his best friend, his understudy, and then he'd... as soon as Cody was out the room, he'd start cutting a promo on the dog. Or something like that, you're an asshole. I hate you, Pharaoh. Something like that. Because... But yeah, building all the way from there to where we are today, MJF turning on Cody at Full Gear. Again, a wonderful turn, especially with the stakes that were on the line put on by Cody, and then it's like an ultimate win for MJF, just like it was like the cherry on top of the cake, or the pie, whatever the saying is. And it's all built so well from there, to the point where you see the different opinions online again, of the people who watch AEW week to week and those who kind of dip in and maybe see stuff, where those who don't like this are seeing the thing of, MJF's not that good a heel because he gets cheered, and I'm like, does he? I'm thinking
he doesn't get cheered.
I'm thinking if you watch those earlier Dynamites or you watch those earlier pay-per-views where MJF was coming out and he'd cut insults and people would cheer the insult kind of thing, then yeah, you would maybe think that. But if you've been watching the television, he's not cheered. Like, he's flat out booed. So he's one of those where it's clearly you've not been watching, and that's what I've said earlier, where the stories are they're so heavily put across that you can't possibly have been watching. I don't mean that, you're not watching it right. It's like, no, you can't possibly have been paying attention. I do it sometimes with a show. I just zone out. I'm not paying full attention. You miss a thing. You misinterpret how. Again, I'm bringing up Westworld because that's what I'm watching currently. There are certain scenes in that where if you've been paying full attention, you will see the scene one way, whilst if you haven't, you'll just see it as a thing happening. So it's like, I guess the same with AEW, where if you're paying attention, you will know these things. And MJF is 100%. Every time he comes out, it's an amazing reaction of boos, and the fact he's going up against arguably the most beloved guy in the company, maybe wrestling. I feel like Cody... Right now, there isn't anybody with the amount of fandom and support that Cody has. I don't think there is anyone else who kind of has that love right now. There have been people in the past, even in WWE, Daniel Bryan, there have been people who have had that level. I feel like Cody is that person of today who has got that. So MJF works so well as the guy against Cody. It's another one of those stories where they've built it up as this massive animosity, this massive blood feud. But I've got absolutely no idea what's going to happen once the bell rings. And for me, that's my favourite part about this. They've done so well to build up the animosity, with Cody having to jump through all of MJF's hoops and willing to do it just to get at the guy. And in the meantime, you built up MJF in that process as well. So you've got two guys who are going to fight each other. But I've got no idea what's going to happen when they actually come to blows. And I absolutely love that. I'm just expecting a full-on massive storytelling, as we always get with Cody matches. They're not your, again, Rich Latter Pro Wrestling 5-star crazy stuff. They're heavily story influenced, heavily past styles of wrestling influences. Cody Rhodes is a massive throwback.
Lots of run-ins.
Yes. Yeah, run-ins, shenanigans, Gemma's got a term.
All the shenanigans.
Gemma's got a term for it. I can't remember what it is. But yeah, lots of the playing up of all the wrestling, that kind of style of it, and I'm expected to get sucked in to whatever they do. I've just got no idea what it's going to be. Cody's going to bleed. That's pretty much a given. Like, even if it's not planned, he somehow finds a way. It's just at the last pay-per-view. So, when I say blood feud, it's going to be quite literally. I'm not expecting MJF to do that because you're not going to get sympathy for MJF. He's not Triple H main event bleeding every main event levels yet. Wait till he's champion doing that. But yeah, I am extremely... And this is a massive moment for MJF as well. Because I kind of feel like so far in AEW, once the bells rang, he seemed fine. But it's the character stuff that drives him way beyond. Which with wrestling, it's a whole package. I'm perfectly fine with someone being fine in the ring in the matches he's been in. They've been quite smart. All of his matches have been like mid-card, middle of the show, no pressure, aside from the fact you're on national television. But no pressure in the sense of you are not the main event guy, you don't have to deliver an amazing match. But now he does. And that could be the takeaway. But because it's a Cody match full of shenanigans, again, that also maybe doesn't matter and takes the pressure off. That way, it elevates MJF without him needing to go absolutely crazy. Rich Latter will face ECE next. Levels of awesome. He doesn't need to do that. But yeah, there will be shenanigans, there will be run-ins, there will be blood, there will be probably a crowd brawl at some point. It feels like that kind of thing. But I don't know what's actually going to happen though.
My best guess is, and they sort of teased this, is that MJF goes after Brandy. Because my take on the characters of this, and I kind of went in a little bit more depth of that a couple of weeks ago in a column, is that MJF originally at first he saw Cody as sort of cut from the same cloth as him, and MJF is a guy who takes shortcuts and who wears suits because he needs to make up for something, and he talks a big game because he knows that he has to talk a big game because he doesn't have a big game to actually show off with. So his bark has to be bigger than his bite because his bite's really small. And he thought that Cody was the same because he saw another person who wore fancy suits who talked a big game. But Cody has proven through going through the trials that MJF laid out for him, hoping that Cody would quit because MJF would quit if he had to go through those things. Cody has proven he's not. And the only thing left for MJF to do to, hopefully try and stop Cody is to go after Brandy. And so I think MJF will win, actually. And I think the way he does it is by finally getting to Cody the only way that he can, and that's by going for Brandy.
Ooh, and that's another thing as well. Where I brought up the older PTEs. That's in there as well. Yeah. And MJF is going to be so hated. He's already hated. You were saying earlier that, if you're not paying attention to stuff, I don't think you need to be paying too hard attention in the last few weeks to know that people don't like MJF. It's pretty loud when he comes out. I predict that he'll go after Brandy. His heat will just keep going up and up and up, and he will beat Cody here to really solidify himself on the roster. But yeah, I agree with everything you said around the match. There's going to be shenanigans galore. Everyone's going to be coming in. You're going to have DDP coming out. You're going to have Arn Anderson. You're probably going to have Tully Blanchard as well. I don't even know if you do the thing they've kind of done with Orton and Edge, because I feel like they're telling that story so damn well. That one thing could something happen where we don't see Cody for a while, therefore we just get full on MJF promos for a while. But AEW, they build something up and then they very smartly move away from it so it doesn't become oversaturated. I don't know if something happening to continue this would be the smartest idea, especially as the way AEW seems to write. Again, they'll build to the pay-per-view and then the characters with what happens there will spin off into something. Then you spend ages building to the next pay-per-view. So yeah, I feel like whatever happens, I feel like MJF is either going to feel extremely elevated or that he got his ass beat by the man of today in Cody. And he maybe lashes out elsewhere because of it. perhaps, maybe. Again, then what happens with Cody, because he can't challenge for the title? There's something else. There's an open door for Cody to do something, whatever it is. Whatever it is, I'm damn excited. And they've built so incredibly well. Like, this is such a well-built story.
Oh, yeah.
Like, yeah. And Cody, there's a reason Cody feels the way he does. I feel like he was already one of the most popular, most beloved guys on the AEW roster. But with this storyline, it's really elevated him to, like, for me, it's like a without doubt kind of level of, like, beloved by the fans. It's incredible.
Yeah, the Lashes segment is one of the, like, I feel like that is going to be, in 5 years' time, that is going to be something that we are still talking about. The way that they paced that segment out, the drama they created with the different people coming in, how MJF went from being, cock-a-hoop to completely so angry and annoyed that Cody was able to get through it, and to Cody crying pretty much and having, and then the steel cage match. I mean, it's not the greatest steel cage match ever, but it was so good and so perfect for the story, how it played out. And particularly since, I mean, this story has been really good since Full Gear, and obviously it's built off a long history these two characters have together, but particularly since MJF laid out the challenge at the start of this year, this story has just been chef's kiss. Just this is amazing wrestling.
And damn excited. Right, next up, as we fly through to the main event. This is a short pod for us. We've actually managed to do it at a decent time. Chris Jericho in the main event defending against Jon Moxley in another incredibly built angle with, I guess, with the whole... It feels like ages ago where it was Chris Jericho offering Jon Moxley a car. That's where it started. The way that it's built since then, and the way that it's lifted the whole inner circle as well. Like Santana and Ortiz, they've had such a good showcase in this feud, especially like getting to dance in the main event with Jon Moxley. Santana with his promo about his dad and the blindness of his dad getting blind and him losing the eye, of what it brought back memories of that. The fact that it's the opposite eye to Jon Moxley. Jon Moxley with loads of people online calling him a pirate, but on AEW it's Metal Gear Solid references, Escape from New York. It's like, yes, I love the this. Well, I think both characters are called Snake, actually, because one bit from the other. Yeah, just like I love they were going like the big boss Jon Moxley kind of, it's a badass kind of thing, rather than ooh, a pirate Jon Moxley. But yeah, the whole thing's been built incredibly well, and for the kind of the brawl that happened at the end of the show on Dynamite this week, and Jon Moxley and Chris Jericho getting that final word, and Jericho still being that kind of arrogant champion who is clearly afraid of Moxley. They've painted that incredibly well, where come bell time, Chris Jericho is probably going to pull out every tactic under the sun to stop Moxley from being able to properly fight to his fullest or something. I'm expecting some shenanigans, but not as many as MJF Cody, but still enough where it gets over Jericho's fear of Moxley. Like Santana and Ortiz are not on the card, so I'm expecting those two in particular, especially as they've already had their fights with Moxley, I'm expecting those two in particular to have some effect on this match, especially as I still feel like Jericho should keep the title. It's really weird. They've built this feud up so incredibly well that you wouldn't be surprised in thinking, well, Moxley's got to win, he's so over, he's so popular. But I feel like Jericho's first reign as champion needs to go on for ages. Just keep him champion for a damn long time, and keep in with Jon Moxley, where just painting that thing of he gets past Jon Moxley rather than like beating him and it feeling like I have beaten Jon Moxley. It's more of he somehow survived by a nefarious means kind of victory for Jericho.
Yeah, because I mean, like this. I loved the first interaction these guys had. It was after Jon Moxley had just obliterated someone. I can't even remember who it was. But Chris Jericho, it was such a contrast between the interactions he'd been having with like Jungle Boy, Scorpio Sky, where he's playing with them and he's insulting them. But then when he enters the ring with Jon Moxley, he is looking like he is entering the ring with a wild animal, ready. Chris Jericho sitting on a hair trigger, ready to just jump out the second Jon Moxley makes a move for him, and that sort of has outlined the characters, because you've got Jon Moxley, who has been the most dominant wrestler on AEW since he has demolished everyone he's gone against. He's demolished Shawn Spears, Joey Janela, Kenny Omega. Every single person he's come up against, he has been able to demolish. But Chris Jericho in this feud has just like slowly chipped away at Jon Moxley, firstly taking his eye out, brawling with him after every single match and just slowly chipping away at him to the point where against Jeff Cobb, Jon Moxley looked, a step slower, didn't have as much power. And, has Chris Jericho sufficiently weakened Jon Moxley to the point where, he can escape him. So he can escape with the title. And, you're right. You're absolutely right. They're going to, Santana and Ortiz are going to factor into this. I wouldn't be surprised if Sammy Guevara factors into this. Maybe even Darby Allen. Who knows? And I would love Jon Moxley to win the title, of course, because anyone who knows me knows I love me some Jon Moxley. But I think Chris Jericho will keep it. I think, as you said, Chris Jericho will escape with the title, because I think it's fitting. It's almost fitting. The only person who could beat Chris Jericho for the title is Cody, really, or maybe Kenny Omega if they do it right. But I don't think Jon Moxley wins the title at this point.
Which, again, it's just the incredible build they've done, where like every bell and whistle is like, this is when Jon Moxley wins. But with AEW, it's just like, no, they've got that long-term thing. And this, again, this is, I'm speaking optimistically, but this pay-per-view still, it's more of the evidence will be in the actions rather than words. Because we've had the words of we do these long-term storytelling, and in the build we've seen it now. Fully kick in, start to get realised. But the pay-per-view is where the action really speaks. And for me, this is the point where where they are making those comments, but this is when, after this pay-per-view, we hopefully will have seen the actions support the words. And that should like really help with long-term stuff. Like with every story setting up the next thing and moving it along. And because they know where they're going, they can drop in things, drop in hints, drop in story moments. And it really helps long-term, as we're seeing with this pay-per-view. It feels like sort of such a high quality because of those little moments that all add up to create the whole picture. It's like compared to like my picture of like a stick man saying hello or something, compared to like a proper portrait type of thing. Like it's the little details that really make up the bigger picture. That metaphor was a bit weird, but the point does that.
It's like a tapestry. A lot going on.
Yeah.
A rich tapestry.
Yeah. Also, somebody draw the AEW tapestry. That would be awesome. Just look at it like that.
Yes, please.
And that... actually, I've not... Have I let you speak? I have let you speak a little bit, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
A lot.
So anyway, that brings us to the end of the show for, again, with me and Sam, this is a short show, 1 hour 40. That's it. To get through a card like this with the amount of stuff to talk about, that's quite an achievement from us. So I'm psychic that you are looking forward to this show then overall.
Yes,
Yes.
Very much so. Very much so. Yeah, I've pretty much only been watching AEW since the start of the year. I've watched a bit of New Japan after Wrestle Kingdom, the big shows they had, but AEW's been the thing that's been taking up my time, and as we've so enthusiastically espoused, it's really scratching a lot of itches that I've had. And particularly I've just loved the build that they've done, particularly since the start of this year. They have nailed every single episode of Dynamite, and I'm really looking forward to this pay-per-view. Hopefully they can nail it. It could be something really special if they do.
Yes, definitely. A massive step above Full Gear, because I feel like with the amount of time between each pay-per-view will be a very strong representation of where the company is at that point. And Revolution feels so damn strong in story, and that really does exemplify where AEW has been at since 2020 hit, really. Been on an incredible stride and run. And yeah, if you're following, it feels like there's a lot to dig into with Revolution. A healthy pay-per-view, big healthy pay-per-view. And as I said earlier, I will be live with AEW Aftershock immediately following the pay-per-view because I'm mental. So it's on a Saturday as well, yet Sunday to recover. It's not too bad then for the rest of the week. And Suck It Americans, I ordered it earlier in the week and it was like $19.99, which translates to like 15 something pounds. So I apologise if you're 60. You've got to pay because of your baby.
Really?
Yeah.
Far out. I think I paid 30 Australian, which is probably about 20-25 US.
Oh, so like,
Sorry,
so that's
Americans.
like 20 quid. So that's not actually that much more expensive. And that's what it costs. It costs that on my PlayStation. So if I was to watch it on my PlayStation, it would cost like 20 quid. So pretty much the same price for me if I was to buy it on that. So that's not too many.
Well, I also pay them seven Australian dollars for
Fight
a month, so I can watch Dynamite for Fight. So you guys get it for free. I pay that, so all evens out in the end.
Same here, but that's like because I tested it out for a month and I really enjoyed the 2-hour kind of stretch you get with it, where it never cuts to commercials. And every week on Dynamite After Dark, because I'm the guy who put together the YouTube video for it, when I'm listening to Dynamite After Dark, they'll complain about it cutting to picture and stuff and cutting to adverts in matches, and I'm like, that's not an issue for me.
Not for me.
Like sometimes you don't even know they've cut until like something will happen, or they'll suddenly go into a rest hold, and it's like, oh, have we been in adverts this entire time? I didn't even realise. Like you're following. Oh, there's the other week where they were following somebody backstage. I want to say it was Kenny Omega or Hangman. They were just following them walking backstage, and I was like, oh, this has gone on a while. Oh, we're in an ad break. It's just like it took ages to suddenly hit. Yeah, I really enjoy watching the full 2 hours, and because I'm watching it like after it's aired as well, I can just like skip past the bit where it's like the single shot ready to. They've got the shot ready for when they come back from adverts, and it's on for like 2 minutes. It's like, oh, I could just skip ahead.
Or the shot of the arena.
Yeah. So yes, it's a good shot.
And you just hear the Dynamite, the looping music.
Or what I nicked from last week, where it was the shot of the AEW logo just on a plane of glass. It's just on a plane of glass. I was just like, that looked really cool.
The steel cage behind it.
Like whoever came up with that, it's like a really simple idea, but it looked really cool. Yeah, especially with the steel cage as well. Yeah. Anyway, thank you to everybody for listening to this entire show. Thank you to Sir Sam for joining me and talking about this instead of New Japan. I'm not going, I just want to talk about New Japan. Yeah, so thank you to Sir Sam for coming along today.
Thank you for having me, Imp. And if you're interested, you can talk to me on Twitter at Sir_Samuel. And I will actually be putting up a column in the next 24 hours or so with a preview of AEW Revolution, which I was planning before I did this, and I've kind of used up all of my good material, so I'll have to find some more. But yeah, check that out on lordsofpain.net or wrestlingheadlines.com, as we're now being trained to call it. So hit me up there, and you can read more of my thoughts there, and I'll probably drop a review next week for Revolution.
And I will be live Saturday night. It's only just dawned on me now. Oh crap, what about the column? Which I normally have started posting on a Sunday. Not thought about that, and I'm not getting up early to watch SmackDown and write to get it out. But yeah, long-term, I've gone on about long-term booking.
Isn't there a WWE show on this weekend? No, I must be mistaken. No, I don't think so.
Yeah, there's nothing.
I don't think
nothing this week I need to watch.
Nothing I want to be concerned about. No.
I mean, with SmackDown, it is John Cena returning, so it would be like ample for me to. No, the column is up. You just can't. Yeah, you can't. Can you not see it? Can you not see the column? My John Cena column. You can't see my John Cena column. No, it's up. Trust me. Yeah. It's a crap gag, but I can use it as an excuse of I am busy with the AEW Aftershock, so I might not get a column out this week. It's only just I've gone on a whole show about long-term booking, and I've not done it myself. So well done, mate. You can follow me on Twitter at the Damn SirSam, Imp. You can read the columns that are there on lawsofpain.net. I post one every week. Again, this week might not do because I'm busy with something else, as I've just ratted on about. I do try and tweet. I'll try and tweet live with AEW, but because I watch on my laptop and my phone has stopped liking Twitter now, so I can't use Twitter on my phone. I have to use it on my laptop. So I'm not as quick with my tweets. And I've done it less nowadays, especially as with like the Royal Rumble, I had like a full column worth of notes where I just posted them and they got nothing. So that was a good test to see if I just post my notes with hardly any editing, will people like that as a column? The answer was no. So at least I learned that lesson. Works for the radio show though. Got great feedback from that. So I'll be live with Aftershock immediately after Revolution this Saturday. It'll be like 5 a.m. my time by the time it's live. So like, wish me luck in terms of energy levels. Also, listen to Jaman and Jeff with their Dynamite After Dark show, which aired last night. It airs every Wednesday live immediately following Dynamite. Fridays is normally the Legacy series with NWA following Power and all of that. I've been doing a full proper like YouTube edit for it, and it's one of those where it's taken me so much time that I feel like I should do this first one, then just pay-per-views from here on out. Because it's taking so long to kind of put together, because doing a proper professional edit with it. So I'll see how that goes long term. Saturdays reviewed for AEW Aftershock. Sundays for WWE pay-per-views. Mondays, no, it's not Kingdom of Honor. Tuesdays is Kingdom of Honor because they've moved across to make it a bit more healthy for them. Especially as Miz Fan is now on Fridays doing NWA. Wednesdays has wrapped up with planned Sports Entertainment is Dead. I've considered moving there, but technically we do have Dynamite, so we do have a Wednesday show. So it's not really necessary. Just like free up some time maybe. So it's in my head. I might do with Legacy series early on a Friday and then Dynamite late on a Wednesday. I could go on a Wednesday. Doesn't really matter. It's one of those behind the scenes things.
You're a crazy man, Imp. You're a crazy man.
It's one of those behind the scenes things that I probably didn't need to bring up. It's just the thoughts that And I am live every single Thursday with this show, sometimes with guests, often by myself because I've not been bothered to hit up people. It more falls into I say laziness. I'm just doing other things, and then I'm like, shall I ask somebody? Oh, I've not got the energy. I'll just do it myself. But I am live every single Thursday with this radio show on Spreaker, on YouTube, whatever. Thank you for listening to this if you've made it all the way to the end here. And with that, I bid you adieu, and Sam bids you
bye-bye.
Hoping for something more Australian, but that'll do. Fit your stereo.
Hooroo. Hooroo.
Adios.
10